Hey everyone, welcome back to BRAP. You have to excuse me. I'm still a little bit under the weather. Wasn't on Crossfire last night because I wasn't really feeling well last night, and didn't do BRAP this Wednesday because I wasn't feeling well. Actually, I haven't been feeling well since last weekend. Yeah, it's still a little bit under the weather, so hopefully, I don't sound too bad. But I do want to welcome to the show. I feel like it's been actually quite some time. We have David Falky with us from Down Under. Falky, welcome back to
Hello.
BRAP.
Good to be here. It has been a few weeks, hasn't it?
A lot, yeah, it has. And in that time, there's a lot happening here in the United States. We had an election. In case you weren't.
Yeah.
So, Falky, I got to ask, because I'm always interested in the perspective outside of the States. It's interesting when I speak to people from Europe, their perspective of the United States, when I've met people from the UK in person. And, sometimes they often have a very different perspective of the U.S. than we do here internally, which is kind of interesting. But what's the perspective there in Australia with Trump being reelected again for a second term?
Mixed. It certainly comes across in our mainstream media as very much repeating similar to what the US media seems to say. It just looks like an absolute circus. Both ways, both sides. The whole thing looks like an absolute dumpster fire. But what Western world election cycle doesn't look like a dumpster fire these days? And they seem to forget that the one thing that they really need to focus on, no matter who it is, which is giving us a reason to vote for them. They seem to focus less on that and more on why you shouldn't vote for the other guy or girl. So, it didn't put the US in the best of lights, put it that way. And of course, the social media side of things, multiple different opinions from multiple different people who, rightly or wrongly, are entitled to share their opinions. But I think the end result is, it's an odd one for us in Australia because voting is compulsory down here. It's the only thing the government will give you is your vote. The only thing they give you for free is you can vote. And down in Australia, you have to vote or you get fined. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's up and down. I was talking to my wife about this morning, and we have slightly different opinions on the outcome, as we're entitled to as individuals. Mine's less grounded in the individual and more in the what will happen when certain things if they said they do comes to pass. How will that affect us? And
Would one of those things, Falky, be?
Others,
Would one of those things, Falky, be increased tariffs?
yeah, it will affect Australia in those. If Trump goes back to war with China using tariffs, that will actually have a positive effect for Australia, and it will allow us access to better negotiate with our biggest trading partner, being China. Australia's biggest trading partner is China by a long way. So most of the stuff that comes out of China, they will have bought the raw minerals from Australia. The iron ore, copper, zinc, lead, all of it. They've come down here, raped and pillaged the joint, took it home. So we'd actually be in a stronger position if we had a better government currently, who were actually focused on making the benefits out of this. They'd actually be able to do something for us. But yeah, the tariff thing is a benefit to most Australians, even though they don't see it that way. But the piece that will have a major impact is if Trump and Elon go on a razor spree and manage to cut $2, $3, or $4 trillion worth of spending out of the federal government in the US. It'll make massive strides, and I would be very surprised if it didn't make massive strides to getting inflation to drop like a rock, which has an impact on us in Australia by reducing the gap with our US dollar exchange rate, and it makes a massive amount of pressure off interest rates over here, and we'll probably see rate cuts come in a lot faster across the board, not just in the US and Australia, Canada, in a lot of different places. And something else that will be more beneficial to the world, if he does what he says he's going to do, would be getting the Middle East to calm down. Shipping costs will go from $2,000 a container or $4,000 a container, I saw the other day, to about $200 a container. So the costs of imported goods or shipped goods will should dramatically reduce if he's doing that. And the idea of tariffs being imposed will drive the cost of everything up. It won't. It'll only drive up the cost of things that are imported. It won't drive up the cost of things that are produced locally, which would, the Harley Davidson example is probably the one that's been used ad nauseum over here. I'm not sure what's been used in the US, but Harley Davidson and John Deere.
Most economists here. Yeah, real quick, Falky. Most economists, there's I'd have to pull the thread on this, but a couple of Nobel economists have, when they reviewed Trump's economic plan, they actually said it wouldn't be good for the U.S. economy. It would actually further drive inflation here, and potentially hurt the job market as well. I'd have to pull. There's 20 or 30 some economists that talked about this. That is all I've heard. From economists on. The plan to and we're going to talk about this. Gizmodo just put an article about the cost of gaming going up should these tariffs be implemented.
Well, maybe if the shipping costs come down and the expense of manufacturing these consoles come down because the FX rate plummets, I don't know. Would shipping them in and having a lower cost base for the production of the consoles and the chips and all the rest of the stuff that goes into them, there's more room for them to reduce the price than lift the price, I would say. But it depends on where they're built, and that's the purpose of the tariff. If the US matched what tariffs are applied against the US from China and in India and other places, then it creates a Mexican standoff, so to speak.
Well, I mean
the flip side to get around that, they just got to produce them in domestically. And there's multiple different ways of getting around that. So it's reading what those economists have all written, it's very much, if these conditions apply, then this will happen. And that's true in those circumstances. But those conditions are very specific and very limited. And the last time, like, Australia was involved in a tariff war with China, China hit us with tariffs because they wanted to produce something internally. And we went, all right, no worries. We'll slap you with tariffs of the same manner. And then all of a sudden, China couldn't sell anything in Australia.
Trade wars.
And then Australia started to produce the stuff itself, created a heap more jobs. It's not a 5-second solution. It takes 18 months, 2 years to get the resolutions through. But the end result is Australia's now got more manufacturing than it had prior to that, manufacturing locally, and we've got a much better handle on what's a decent item to import versus what we can make locally. Swings and roundabouts there. If you're giving more jobs to people domestically rather than having them shipped off overseas, well, there's arguments both ways on whether that's good or bad for the economy. But yeah, in terms of how I see it benefiting us, if he gets into particularly for gaming, if they get into a bloody tariff war with China and they can cut out all this additional spending from over there and get on, when I say additional spending, if they can get their hands on fixing what's driving up the inflation, because spending money on infrastructure and getting people employed and keeping that growth cycle going, that's not wasteful spending, but just giving money away for the sake of giving it away doesn't benefit. If it's just a single point transaction, there's no flow-on effect. That's the sort of stuff they need to get rid of, the bloated spending. But if they can get inflation to drop pretty quickly.
Inflation in the U.S. now is 2.1%. But the Fed's target's 2% or 2%.
Yeah, most Western countries target 2% because they need to keep it ticking up at a rate that just keeps people interested. You don't want it to go too fast, but at the same time, it's a growth rate. It's not
things
will go back to a certain price.
Yeah, exactly.
It's trying to slow down how fast it's growing.
How fast it's growing. Those the grocery prices here. What I've been telling people here, like, look, I understand what certain administrations or certain candidates were promising, but those prices aren't going to go down. This is there might be some there could be some lessening, but it's not going to be like pre-pandemic level, is what I'm saying.
No.
And real quick,
the change. Yeah.
Real quick, Falky, just this data point here quickly. The tariffs that were initially imposed with the U.S. in 2018 to China did have had a net negative effect on manufacturing jobs here in the U.S. The Federal Reserve Board actually found that the tariffs that were imposed led to a 1.4% reduction in manufacturing employment in the U.S. There were some modest gains from shielding domestic producers from foreign competition, although they say that these were more than often offset by rising production costs and retaliatory tariffs from other countries. So, just a quick data point.
That's all right. And these things are like any time you want to get into a pissing contest with an economic rival. It depends on the purpose of doing it. The example I was going to give that we'd been hearing a lot of over here was with John Deere and Harley Davidson. With India, they'd both been told, and India's a massive market for both of those companies. They'd been told, if you want to operate in India, that's fine. But if you don't build the stuff in India, we're going to put a 250% tariff on whatever you bring over, which straight away makes them uncompetitive in a market that is pretty big. So the options are either America applies the same tariff to anything coming out of India, or they make it very difficult for companies that are domiciled in the US to move their manufacturing to unfriendly economic situations. And it's not like John Deere is going to pick up their mass manufacturing plants and shift them offshore in any great rush. But if you're talking about protecting a couple of thousand jobs or tens of thousands of jobs in a particular manufacturing industry, throw up the retaliatory tariff, and then you find a way of negotiating with, as a last tactic rather, to negotiate with whoever the other side is, to try and get your companies to fall in line with supporting people locally. And it may be that they just want the jobs, or it may be that they want better conditions for the people who work there, or something in that ilk. There's multiple different outcomes. If the number of jobs disappeared, but the amount that people were getting paid and different jobs are arising in servicing that industry, like manufacturing goes to automation. Well, you don't need production line workers anymore. You need people to service the equipment.
Mm-hmm. You need to retrain your. This goes back to manufacturing here in the U.S. One of the things that I've had a conversation with someone today is, you want to bring back manufacturing, you kind of have to retrain employees to do some of the things you just mentioned. Yeah,
we've had manufacturing is a mug's game if China and India are involved in it, because just fucking sweatshop everything basically.
That's what I keep telling people.
How do you compete with that?
Yeah, the textiles are not coming back to Baltimore here in the U.S. anytime soon. On that note, real quick, speaking of tariffs, I want to welcome Game Logic to the show. What's going on, Logic?
Speaking of tariffs?
Yes.
Am I the tax man? Am I the repo man?
You are the tax. You're always coming to collect receipts.
That would make him the auditor.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I stand correct. You are the auditor then. What's going on, Logic?
Not much, guys. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we just having a conversation about tariffs. Tariff wars. But anyhow.
But to be fair, it does highlight. I mean, you and I have got slightly different perspective of how these things should or shouldn't work. And we're having a very civil conversation of what we think. Now, this may work, it may not work. We don't have a crystal ball. If we had a crystal ball, we probably would have put some decent bets on before the week started. But we will see how it affects the US domestically versus how it affects the broader globe. And just from an economic perspective, it would be really good if the it's not just the inflation number, but if a heap of other economic factors domestically at the US could get back in their range really quickly, it will have a massive flow-on effect just from the FX impacts alone, which will in turn will affect gaming.
BRAP, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Oh, I was talking. Thank you, Logic. I was just saying there's an article. Sorry, I had to go get a cough drop because I'm still feel like butt. But yeah, there was an article today by Gizmodo, and it was Trump's proposed tariffs will hit gamers hard. I don't know. Let me read some of the article here. So Gizmodo is reporting a study found that costs of consoles, monitors, and other gaming goods might jump during Trump's presidency. Talks about Donald Trump winning. One of the reasons electronics are cheap in America is its robust trade relationship with China. During the campaign, Trump said he'd impose a baseline 60% tariff on Chinese exports. If he does that, the price of all the stuff gamers love is going to go up. Laptop prices could spike by almost 50%. The cost of video game consoles could rise around 40%, making the upcoming PS5 Pro cost almost $1,000. The Switch 2 may be backwards compatible. That was confirmed this week as well by Nintendo. I think that's a great move by Nintendo. I think you guys would agree with that, right? We've always kind of discussed Nintendo's archaic approach to their hardware software. But it may cost a bit more than the original Switch. Trump campaigned on punishing China for a perceived trade imbalance with the United States. It was a winning issue for him in his original campaign and one he acted on, and he spent time on the campaign trail saying he'd do it again. Trump's broad plan is to encourage the return of U.S. manufacturing through restrictive tariffs. Tariff is a flat tax on a trade good. Trump's two big proposals are a 10% to 20% import tariff on all goods from other countries and a 6% tariff on goods from China specifically. China does not pay the cost of those tariffs. The companies importing the goods from China do. Companies have been clear that if tariffs raise their cost of doing business, they're going to pass the cost on to the consumer, or often tariffs, the cost is passed through the supply chain. If we get tariffs, we will pass those tariff costs back to the consumer. AutoZone CEO Philip Daniel said on an earnings call in September. The CTA, Consumer Technology Association, the trade association behind the Consumer Electronics Show, published a study in October that looked at the possible effects of a 60% tariff on consumer electronics. Important to keep in mind that the study is commissioned by a trade group that stands to lose an enormous amount of cash should the tariff go through on electronics. That said, it's still a strong indicator of where the industry's head is at and what it believes would be a worst-case scenario when Trump takes office. Study looked at 10 different consumer tech products: smartphones, laptops, connected device, video game consoles, various computer accessories. According to the study, a tariff on electronics in China would have the immediate effect of spiking prices, the long-term effect of driving manufacturing to other countries. Critically, though, those other countries would not be the United States. It's still too expensive to make stuff in America and keep costs down. Across the board, the tariffs will cause significant price increases for the U.S. consumer, the study said. The CTA estimated that laptop and tablet costs would go up 46%, smartphones will go up 26%, and video game consoles would spike 40%. That kind of increase would put the cost of the forthcoming PS5 Pro at just under $1,000. A top-line GPU, the kind used for AI and gaming, could blow from around $900 to $1,300, although I think that would happen without tariffs because Jensen needs another leather jacket. The price of monitors would go up to $109. Desktops would go up around $74 overall, and headphones could cost an extra $35. So this is according to the CTA survey from October, or CTA's survey from October. So, any thoughts on that? This particular article by Gizmodo and what the survey discusses here? Throw it out to you, Falky, since you're the numbers guy here.
I don't know if I want to comment on this one. It's a tough one. Relying on a paid-for assessment by a group that's lobbying to have something happen because
I mean, they are a lobbyist organization. They are trade associations to certainly lobby. That's a good point. That's fair.
Yeah. But then, and I say that through gritted teeth to a degree, because if you're on the other side of the coin to try and have a competitive standing in this, no matter where you are in the world, you'll lobby the other side of this. And that's what politicians are effectively there to do with these committees and whatnot, is to work out how do we we're supposed to be there to work out how do we maintain a level playing field for the broader markets to act in. I don't know, based off that article and just having read through the back end of that article as well. Like, they close out with saying, if you're planning on upgrading your PC, building one from scratch, or even buying a console, it might be wise to pull the trigger on it before Trump is inaugurated on January 20th, 2025. The price after might skyrocket. Would you say that the prices have gone up or down since 2020, 2019, 2018 in this space as it stands? Because I don't see anything getting cheaper, and they haven't touched these tariffs. So it's a kind of a, I don't know.
Well, I'd say, PC components we've seen peak and fall, right? I mean, it's kind of been an oscillating wave. I mean, during years of the pandemic, I mean, there were just points where I couldn't build a PC, right, because of the skyrocketing price of GPUs.
I find that hard to believe, Logic. By the way, I think that's cap. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But go ahead.
And the scarcity, right? The lack of availability. And we've seen GPU prices come back down. We have GPUs now. I mean, for a very long time, the notion of the $500 GPU was just gone, impacting some people who had this concept of what building a budget PC was. So we have seen them come back down. That has not entirely been like due to tariffs. That was due to scarcity and foreign exchange rates and lots of the Bitcoin craze and lots of other stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I think a 60% tariff impact on straight up cost. If the trade-off to that is you get a 40% reduction in the FX movement in terms of the cost of getting these things built and getting them across the line. There's so many moving parts associated with this. If it's, if Sony builds it and Xbox, Microsoft builds most of their stuff in China anyway, then most of the computer chips and all that sort of stuff's built in China and Taiwan and all this other bits and pieces. Slapping a tariff on it's only going to hurt the government themselves to a degree, particularly in their defense spending area. But if it opens an opportunity for another player to come in and compete in that area, then this may turn out to be something of a benefit. But it all really depends on whether someone wants to have a crack at it or not. Japan moved a heap of its chip manufacturing out of Taiwan into Japan because of tariff situation that occurred between Japan and China, and that's how TSCM? TCSM? I can't remember the acronym now. Did that
TSMC.
TSMC's got 2 plants in Japan, one with Sony, one with someone else, and now Sony and is it Kawasaki Heavy Manufacturing or something? I can't remember which one it was now. They went in a partnership to build a third one, because Japan wants to be self-reliant with its chip manufacturing so that it isn't exposed to these things. Now, the trade-off to that is it's freaking expensive. But if America wants to become self-sufficient in technology area, and the amount of really, really, really smart people that can build a really, really big manufacturing plant really, really quickly that exists in the US.
Have you been to the US?
I would have thought, well, again, this is how they perceive to the world.
I mean, this is I mean, look, this is my Logic. I think you and I've talked about this. I don't know if you agree with me on this, Logic, but this goes back to kind of retraining the workforce too a little bit. And that, like when I'm recruiting for technology roles, most of the people I'm hiring aren't, native citizens of the U.S. here. So, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a knowledge gap that exists for sure, and it's pretty evident. But then everywhere in the Western world that doesn't have manufacturing has that problem. We don't have the knowledge that we need to be self-sustaining in certain circumstances. It's I'm probably waxing lyrical a little bit here on circumstances that may or may not play out, but if it creates an opportunity for an advancement in self-sufficiency around hardware technology or technology hardware within the US and no longer heavily reliant on other trading partners who may or may not become hostile at any stage, then it gives the US more leverage in their endeavors to continue to be a world leader in certain areas. At the moment, if China decides we don't want you having our stuff, good luck. What does that do to a country? Picking a fight with them is a bit, when you don't have that ability, picking a straight out
you don't
force is not a smart thing to do.
Well, fuck you. We don't have we don't have the apparatus to make up for that loss, for losing that trading partner is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's the flip side to this idea with the tariffs. You can slap the tariffs on. If they're a one-way tariff, if China's putting 60% on everything coming in from the US, and the US can't sell into China without with that unfair with that unfair situation, and Australia's suffered this for the last 7 or 8 years anyway. Our biggest export partner slaps tariffs on us today and will pull other ones down tomorrow. It's spanked around like a bloody. I can't use that analogy.
This conversation around tariffs is getting a little kinky, Falky. Like I'm hearing words like slapping and
it's multiple. If you don't mind being demonetized, I can give you a really good example. But you get shagged either way. No matter what you do, you're going to get put over a barrel and driven hard. So, I think the fallback position is you want to be able to have the ability to provide people with an opportunity to go and earn a living that's sustainable, them to have a safe, happy, and healthy life, regardless of where they are in the economic ladder, and give them the opportunity to advance. And if a trading partner is taking that opportunity away from a country, or is aiding in the exit of those major corporations and businesses that provide those opportunities from a country, then certainly you need to put something down to stem the bleeding. But as I said before, the only examples that we've gotten over here that I've been able to find are the ones with Harley Davidson and John Deere going to India. It's a massive growing market for both of those companies, and the trade, the coming back the other way issue is that India's got 5 tractor manufacturers who seem to be making massive strides into the markets in America, and John Deere and Case can't compete. Versatile from Canada even can't compete. And Royal Enfield sending motorcycles over to the US and selling them for half of what local manufactured motorcycles over there are. It doesn't seem fair when you look at it from standing right back and seeing it going back and forth. It's but slapping a 250% tariff on those things coming in would raise the cost to the consumer, yes, but it would raise the cost to something that's comparable, and would not drive the jobs out of the country in a hurry. Now that's taking it from a economic perspective, sitting here in the bean counter's chair. The other option is, from the consumer's perspective, is no, bugger it. Don't put the tariffs on it. I want to buy my stuff cheap as shit because I'm worried about me as a tractor owner or farmer, or I'm worried about me as a consumer of a motorcycle, because motorcycles aren't a necessity. They're a fun thing to have. I don't care about if I don't work at the plant. I don't care about whether they've got a job or not, and that's that dichotomy of trying to balance it out. So. I like not paying a lot of money for stuff. Everyone knows that I'm a tight ass, and I've said that plenty of times. I will not pay $70 US for a brand new game. I'll wait till it's on sale for like 20 Australian, which is about $10 US. And I don't care if I got to wait 4 or 5 years. That's where I sit at it. But if everyone was like that, we wouldn't get those games. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one to see how that'll play out. Particularly if he wants to have another pissing contest with China.
I mean, one thing we should inject into the conversation is so I don't know that it would be accurate to assume entirely that all of those tariffs are unilaterally going to hit like every single product area. I mean, the question that's really being asked, and that sounds like that article didn't really bring into it. I'm a little bugged by the title of that article. Like a lot of those things that they talked about, prices impacting stuff, like gamers unilaterally are not like all in that same pool. There are plenty of gamers who wouldn't recognize what the hell brand or specs of a laptop were if you put it in front of their face. Because they barely go online except other than on their console. But the real question that's going
and Logic, the other point too, to your point. I mean, I don't know about you, but every screen in my house is a Xbox. So, that would really impact me. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the key question really being asked, right, when it comes to the technology sector, is are the tariffs going to be applied unilaterally? For Trump 1.0, many of those electronics were given exemptions. Apple products were given exemptions. And so part of the reality that's going in, right, when this is a dangerous statement to make. If you assume some degree of common sense be applied in the execution of the tariffs, then logically you would apply the tariffs to things that had suitable substitutes that were manufactured in America. The whole point is to try and would theoretically be to make American businesses more competitive and to lead to job growth in America. So you would not need to put high tariffs on something for which there was not a suitable substitute manufactured in America. You don't put tariffs in Trump 1.0 on the iPhone because the alternative to the iPhone are other things that are made out of China, right? There's nothing that replaces the iPhone that's made in America. So that's the big question, right? That's outstanding right now. Some of the questions in the chat was about like the CHIP Act, and wasn't that money supposed to? Wasn't the CHIP Act supposed to funnel money to set up plants here? And that's already started. Yes, that has already started. One of those plants, TSMC's plant, is supposed to come online. It's notionally achieved IOC, but it is not actually cranking out. As far as I understand, the last time that I read up on it, it's not actually cranking out like producible units that are going into inventory that's hitting retail shelves. They're still into making, I guess, I wouldn't call them prototype, but I would call them LRIP kind of runs to get the factory's feet. Yeah, the big problem at those plants is one, you're still on learning curve for the workforce that's being onboarded. But the key thing that's happening there culturally is, and I hate to tell you guys, and if anybody's going to get sensitive, I'll just tell you, go ahead and get in your feelings right now because I'm about to hurt them. Americans are lazy in comparison to the way those plants run,
Sir,
right, overseas.
Excuse me. No.
Accurate.
No, hey, you can't speak for my Latinos, man.
Yes, but look, BRAP, I'm sorry, I don't think there's a large number of frontline engineering managers. Of the Latino. I'm not saying none.
Okay.
I'm not saying none. I'm not saying none. I'm just saying by numbers. Look, man, I'm just saying by numbers. Look, simply based on percentage of the population of people who would meet those requirements. I mean, there's probably not a ton of black frontline managers there either, simply based on demographics of the United States.
That's
and the sheer population of black
Americans in the United
States. Well, that too. So my point is that those plants right now are having huge cultural problems because Americans are not willing to work the same hours that's in execution over at the Chinese plants, and that's in the Taiwanese plants, and that's what's needed to actually have those plants crank out product at the volume that they crank them out. So who knows whether or not those plants will ever achieve that level. The other thing, though, to add into that mix is, are those plants necessarily a dampening effect? Let's say tariffs do get applied unilaterally. Those plants being here aren't necessarily a dampening effect to those assembled products that are assembled overseas, because you're not going to fabricate the chip here, ship it over to China where the PlayStation 5 Pro is assembled, right, to ship it back over to the United States, right? So lots of those parts, I mean, are probably, for enthusiast DIY types of markets, but there also would be for electronics that are assembled here. Maybe stuff coming out of there is going to plants where they're assembling the Steam Deck, for instance. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, I would hope that a lot of those things that there are not suitable substitutes for, don't get those tariffs applied and get some exceptions made.
I think
You mean like iPhones too? Yeah, go ahead, Falky.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the impact is his logic's just laid out very, very well. I would point out is it would be nonsensical to drive up the cost of those items, and then expect the consumers to foot the bill, because the consumption will just decrease phenomenally, and they won't generate the revenue that they're aiming to generate. Again, just not forget, Trump said tariffs was one way that he was going to, instead of taxing the individuals directly, he was going to put tariffs up to level the playing field, and in an attempt to try and get those gaps in tax revenue for the other stuff he wants to do sorted out. And whether that pans out, that still relies on volumes of stuff to come through for those tariffs to apply. It would likely be more around consumable goods, not of an electronic nature, which can be readily replicated. So, foodstuffs and that sort of stuff, which can be readily replicated with current structures that are in place. But the impact on foreign exchange has a far more tangible and immediate outcome to the consumer than the fiddling around with the cost to produce the componentry and whatnot. Those costs, when you're not assembling but manufacturing the components that go into anything to do with gaming, be it PC, and that's up and down the board. It's not just the PC or the consoles. That's TVs, handhelds, screens, all the rest of it. The whole slate of stuff that goes into these bits and pieces. If you can get the FX rates to settle down to somewhat of a sensible level and get some immunity to the impact of the tariffs, by that being the trade-off, the componentry is already committed for, and the costs are already committed for before it even hits the facility for production line, because they've got to buy the raw materials and then produce the raw materials. So it's the sell-out point. Once they're assembled, the tariff is trailing by a long degree. The FX rate is immediate, and will have a more positive effect if the FX rates get sorted than the tariffs being applied at some point, whether they're carved out or not. And especially if they get the electronic stuff as a carve out from these tariffs, the FX rate will be a massive benefit for companies to be able to drop the price of items rather than continuously raising the price of items around gaming. And if we're lucky enough and the energy stuff comes through as well, the cost of digital distribution might actually become cheaper, and we won't see $100 games when the next generation launches.
So I think the funny thing to watch go down, if you really want to talk about this, doesn't apply to gaming, is I think the potential wackadoodle, the wallabanger, if you will be food. So the U.S. imports more than half of its fresh food and a third of its vegetables from other countries. Let's say we do the mass deportation.
And I was going to say, who picks those vegetables?
Exactly.
I mean, like seriously, like let's speak. Look, man, I am Latino. Everyone knows this. We do the work that a lot of people don't want to do. So
facts.
So go ahead, Logic. Finish your thought here, but go ahead.
So we do the mass deportation of a lot of people that pick a lot of those fruits and vegetables. And I'll say specifically in California, I always love pointing out my
and
brethren
your
in
houses.
Watsonville. Yeah. I always love pointing out my brethren in Watsonville. I used to live out on the West Coast. Used to drive through Watsonville all the time. Pick me up like a very large amount of strawberries whenever I went through. You deport a lot of those people. In order to continue to have that production, that farmers got to hire Americans. The wages are going to be higher. So that cost of that food is going to go up. Now you're going to also rate the other 50% of the food that you import. That price is also potentially going to go up. So we will go up because of the tariffs. Canada is the largest supplier of meat and fish to the U.S. So you're going to put tariffs on that. U.S. also imports coffee, cocoa, rubber, cashews, raw sugar, and rice. So, plus a lot of the, unfortunately, right, a lot of the chemicals that are used in food come from other countries as well. Although, RFK says he's going to eliminate that. So I don't know. It's going to be an amazing swirl of the economy. One thing that's super interesting, and Falky, you may agree with me, you may disagree. I'd be curious to find this, is one thing you probably don't want to do to the economy is issue it numerous concurrent shocks, the total sum impact of which you cannot possibly calculate or foresee. Maybe I do that a little tiny bit at a time, or I tweak one variable, but I don't do like 12 big muscle movements right all at once, which seems to be the intention for January 2025, or at least Q1 of 2025.
Yes. You don't want to suplex. You don't want to take it to Suplex City for 5 minutes. You want to.
Oh my God, that's great. I'm sorry.
You want to. You want to go for the 60-minute 60-minute bloody slobber knocker.
You don't want to put the economy in hell in the cell.
No. Elimination chamber maybe, but not a hell in a cell, and especially not on top of the cell to start with, because you'll end up with a tooth hanging out of your nose. Great
Nick Foley reference there, by the way. But go ahead.
Thank you. The impact is it's so broad reaching that you'd either shock it into unconsciousness, or you would shock it into life in a manner that you don't expect, and that's always the risk. And any time you do anything, but it's the food one's a really interesting one. Do you create a heap of jobs for low-skilled individuals in rural areas for them to be able to go out and earn a living wage and work on these farms and all the rest of it, where there's not a high level of technology advancement in some of these rural areas? And I can say that I work with farmers. I live in a farming area and I grew up on a farm. Some of the farming processes and practices that massive amounts of US areas deploy is archaic to a degree, and I still can't believe that they do that in today's modern age. But there's better ways of growing more food, but they're not being forced to do it. They're being paid to ignore it. If there's the opportunity to provide a couple hundred jobs in each area, and does that mean that food's going to cost more? Well, it may not. It depends on the advancements on how they're able to do it. But the cost of growing food in the US is ridiculous. That's why they import it. But at what point do you stand back and go, well, I'd rather, and this is always the challenge as an individual, would you rather pay a lot less for your food and have 5 or 6 or 7 different businesses touching it before it gets to you, or would you rather pay a little bit more for your food and it basically becoming direct from the farm via a market?
Well, the thing is, Americans don't care. All they care about is that they're complaining about their grocery bill being higher.
That's right. So if the cost of making the food and going through one market via transport, and the transport costs become lower, and the costs of growing it become lower because of X, Y, Z to do with energy prices. And don't make a mistake, energy prices are massive point to do with farming and food production. If you can get that cheaper internally as opposed to shipping it in from externally, then that has a downward pressure on the grocery prices at the same time as giving people more jobs. That's the balance that they should be trying to get to. Now, can that happen or can that not happen? Well, again, time will tell. But if you're talking in that respect, that's great for one hand. But then on the other hand, the people who are already doing the job, whether they're there legitimately or not, doesn't matter. They're still earning a living doing that job. The farmers are only able to compete by taking up that option. And it happens here in Australia. Three farms near where I live that have all gotten in trouble for having people here working on them from Asia that shouldn't be here doing that. No one locally will do the job. Can't get anyone here that even people that are on welfare will not go out and pick vegetables. And we don't have the technology in Australia like they do in Europe to pick carrots and broccoli and all that sort of stuff with the machinery that those guys play with.
So, Falky,
they've got an advantage. So,
are you guys talking about? Is there a plan to mass deport the Asians who are doing those jobs?
Well, I don't know if the mass deportation numbers are the same numbers as what they're talking about in the US, but we regularly send a couple of thousand home a week. It just doesn't make the news. But, you know, when they had the border issues here in Australia before we did the whole stop the boats thing, it was, you know, immigration camps. They had about a dozen or so of them, detention facilities. I think we had like 180 or 200,000 people sitting in across all those facilities while we tried to figure out how we were going to process them. And yeah, about a dozen or so broke out once, and no, they didn't break out. One of the courts said that they had to be released because they burned all their papers. We didn't know where they came from. We didn't know where the government needed to send them back. So they got told to be released, and 9 of the 12 within 24 hours of being released all committed heinous crimes. And got themselves arrested, and then now they're sitting in a jail. We can't send them back anywhere, and I think 4 of them are going to sit in jail for life because they raped and murdered people. You know, the ones that were legitimate refugees or had a legitimate claim to come in, so the Tamils from Sri Lanka, and there were a heap of Sudanese people as well, Sudanese Christians. They all got visas to come in and get into the country and all the rest of it. And I think we sent more than 70% of them back to where they came from. But the ones that come in, so the way the scheme works is a farmer can get someone in on a 457E visa or something like that. So they come in for seasonal picking, and once they're in and they've done their seasonal picking, they just go for a walk. And the farmer who brought them in doesn't know where they went, and because we don't have tracking on their visas or anything, as long as they don't pop up somewhere where they could be identity matched or anything like that, and just go from farm to farm and do their existence, and that's it. And then occasionally a farm will get pinged because they've got people here that local authorities don't recognise, or they've come into town and done something, been dobbed in or whatever it is, and yeah, then the police go out, chuck the cuffs on them, take them to the airport, and send them home.
Hey, sorry, gentlemen, real quick, we do some breaking news here. Very unfortunate news. I hate to report this, but Tony Todd, the actor from Candyman and Final Destination, has passed away at age 69.
That is sad.
Yeah, voice of Venom.
Yeah, voice of Venom.
Worf's brother on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, was also in the movie Platoon. Star Trek, you're right, The Next Generation. He did some voice acting, some video games too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Venom and Spider-Man.
Oh, Venom and Spider-Man, right. Yep, that's right. Yeah,
a few other roles.
Yep. Yeah, so apparently he had been, according to his wife, he had been dealing with a long-term illness. Don't know what the illness is, but but yeah, it's being reported he just passed away.
He's been in a few movies in supporting roles, hasn't he?
Yeah,
he's in the Indiana Jones. Wasn't he in the upcoming Indiana Jones game?
In the game? Wouldn't surprise me.
In the game? thought I read somewhere that he was. That's really sad. Jeez, we've lost. Always lose them in threes, don't we? We lost Quincy Jones earlier in the week, didn't we?
Yep.
Oh yes, we do. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. We lost Quincy Jones. That's right. At age 90, he was 97, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, that's just sad news. Yeah.
The things that both of these gentlemen have done for their respective art forms, their praises will never be sung high enough.
Yeah, lots of animated stuff too.
Oh, his voice was just so dynamic.
Oh,
Credited
Candyman!
with
I tell
so
you,
much.
Candyman is what really, that movie freaked me out.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. That is a running joke that Priscilla found out about me when I was
What's
younger,
that?
when that movie first came out.
Does Priscilla try to scare you like Candyman or something like?
No. So I told her what happened though. So when that movie came out, I went to go find my older brother, and he was at one of his friends' house because I forgot my mom wanted me to get him for something. I can't remember what it was, and I remembered where he was. So they were watching Candyman at his friend's house, and like, I mean, yeah, I was like, I don't know, maybe like 8 at the time or something. I can't remember the exact age, but I was young. Like I was still a kid, and so I went there, and like the movie was like finishing up, and so he was like, "Oh man, just come in." He was at his friend's Jeff's house, and when the movie was done, so they were, the movie, it's already dark, right? When the movie was done, like I had only just seen like what it was, but I still didn't even like horror movies back then. So what they did is while the lights were off and the movie finished, they were like, yo, come here. And like they had like a full-length mirror right there. They held me in front of the mirror and said Candyman 5 times, and I ran all the way home. Wouldn't let me go. It's like, I hate y'all, bro. From then on, for like the next 5 years, I would not go in the bathroom without turning the light on around the corner.
Man. That's dramatic.
There's some stuff like even though it's like a movie and it's like fake and fantasy, like there's some stuff you don't F with, right? You don't.
That's one of them.
You don't do the Candyman thing, yeah. Like all those things of like say something about someone's name 3-5 times or whatever. No, you don't mess with that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not inviting nothing, man. I was like, I'm not doing nothing.
Right? No Ouija board stuff. Nah.
Yeah, Ouija boards, don't do that. Yeah,
don't do that. We're not doing that. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, we're not doing that. I remember a friend of mine, she was telling me in college, a girl tried to bring one into the dorm, and it like everybody was like, "Oh hell no!"
They threw her ass out. Get out!
Don't even throw that out in here. Throw that outside across the street, like in straight in the dumpster. Like we're not doing that here. Yeah, man, we don't play like that.
Tony Todd, video game wise, Tony Todd was in Spider-Man 2, Back for Blood, Half-Life Alyx, Dota Underlords, Layers of Fear 2, Artifact, I don't know what that is, Dota 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Marvel Superhero Squad Online, I don't know what the hell that is, Star Trek Online. That would, I wouldn't surprise me if he's reprised his role as Worf's brother on that one. Half-Life 2 Episode 2, he was Vortigaunt in that game. Star Trek Elite Force 2, which two of my, not highly praised or sung games, but I loved the Star Trek Elite Force games by Raven before they became a Call of Duty studio. Legend of Dragoon and Star Trek The Next Generation Klingon Honor Guard.
Yeah, I didn't know he was in
Legend of Dragoon. He's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and just looking at IMDb, they've got him credited in 12 upcoming releases.
That's wild.
Including Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's nuts.
Yeah, that's
about working right up to the end. That's and if he's been battling long-term health, and you love what you do, it's difficult to stop. But most of us, all of us on this call, we have something that we love doing. But yeah, that's 69. That's just way too young.
Yeah, that is young for sure. Yeah, so very sad news indeed. I do want to move on to Falky, since I have you here. I don't know how long I have you for.
Yes, please.
Please
move on. I don't want to talk about tariffs anymore.
Yeah, no, that was interesting. It was a good conversation. I enjoyed it. Because often when you have that conversation, it's like, people just, anyhow,
it's nice. It is nice to have a conversation where the other person on the other side of it, or the other people involved in it, aren't just going, "No, you're wrong," and then can't explain why.
No,
Exactly.
So I appreciate the intelligent conversations.
No, but Falky, but to your point, I mean, the point is, though, and the why I wanted the conversation, it's not as simplistic as people say it is. Like I've seen people say, "Oh, it's going to solve all our problems." Like, nah, it's not that. It's not that simple. There's so many different variables in the equation that one variable could go one way and totally, shit the bed. So it's not as simplistic as people think it is. It's not, they were good. No, it's not like that. It's not how that necessarily works.
Genies aren't orange with weird blonde hair.
What's that?
You don't get your three. Genies aren't orange skinned with weird blonde hair. You don't get your 3 wishes from rubbing that lamp.
Exactly. So, so Falky, there was some news. Sony, Hiroki Totoki, you had talked about their financials on X today or Twitter, and I did see something from him regarding the studios and kind of a lesson learned from the closing of Firewalk. But please share with the audience like what you discussed with regards to Sony's profit margins.
Yeah. Just give it the precursory once over and noted that they increased their forecast by a decent amount, and then having a look at that, they're forecasting to actually by the end of the year get over their 10% target for gaming and network services in their operating income, which is pretty decent considering I actually went back and had a look at the last couple of quarterly reports. They were around nearly 5.5% 9 months ago. They were in a world of hurt. And yeah, it's pretty decent turnaround. I think I said chalk one up for the bean counters because they've got this one back on track. But yeah, they're doing, considering what they're up against, they're doing pretty well. The console sales have dropped off compared to last year, as we all expected, but monthly active users is up. The revenue generated from game sales is up. It's looking pretty good across the board, and the forecast is coming back with some really good looking stuff as well. They've been increasing their forecast. I'll start that again. The first time they've done a half-year forecast increase in the last 2 years. And with lessening console unit sales, they're obviously banking on the game sales and then the revenue per user. ARPU, is it? Average revenue per user or something like that. I think we keep referencing it here in this forum. It seems to be holding pretty high.
You talking about ARPU?
That the monthly, ARPU, that's it. The monthly active users is steady. Stagnant's probably not the word I would use. Let's say stabilized at about between 116 and 118 million. So that's pretty decent. And the engagement that they're getting from that is what one of the things Totoki was saying is that they're actually seeing an increase or maintaining a higher level of spending across those individuals. And it's providing that stabilized base. So this is without going down the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole about live service games and constantly generated revenue versus spike revenue from game sales. PlayStation's business model is predominantly built off third-party sales, which allows them to have that baseline revenue, a flatter revenue than a peaks and troughs curves that some of the publishers have because they've got massive games coming out at different intervals. And Take-Two's financial report suggested something of that nature. But what they've got is they've got a stable base of earnings, and so I'll read. Let's go to PS Plus is providing a stable base of earnings that starts on a US dollar basis, increased 18% year on year. This is due to an increase in ARPU, average revenue per user, primarily resulting from a shift to high tier of service and the impact of price revisions. Yes, they cranked the price up, but they've still got the same amount of people engaged. They haven't disengaged, which means that they're prepared to pay that premium to continue on. And with the third-party software growing across all those titles, new and old IP, they're getting a broader user base engaging to maintain that. So the reliance on a Fortnite-style game is deteriorating really quickly, and they've actually got something else that's coming up to push up that constant revenue stream. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when the Pro releases as to whether the monthly active users comes up and if the ARPU goes up with it, or if the monthly active user stays the same and the ARPU goes up. Because if the second outcome persists, where there's more revenue per user, that's a much better outcome than more users spending less revenue, because the users can drop off quite quickly. If you've got your user base engaged, and we've been screaming this from the top of the hill, and I say we, all of us on this call, including you, Nate, have been screaming this from the top of the hill since about 2021, when this whole buyout of Activision and Bethesda and all that sort of mass consolidation thing started hammering on, and Game Pass was the be-all and end-all. It didn't matter how many users you had if you couldn't generate revenue from them. You could have 1 billion users. If you're giving the thing away for free, it's worth nothing. This is the other side of that. What they're achieving here is what they need to achieve. They've got users engaged, spending money with them, and it's spending money across the board. It's not just spending money on subscription or first party or third party. They're spending money across the board, and that revenue per user engagement is going up and up and up. And that allows PlayStation to pull back on these riskier games that, obviously one of them didn't work. I'll talk more about that comment in a minute. But the necessity to have 3 or 4 massive long-term live service games is now not as much as it was 2 years ago, when their ARPU was significantly down and their MAUs were going up and down. What they've got now is they could probably get away with the ones they've got and not need a new one. They are building to more that we know of coming, but they probably don't need 3 more. Sorry, 3 more we know are coming, but they probably don't need them to be as big a hits as what they previously were requiring them to do. So their revision down may actually be a benefit for those games to survive. But moving on to the second point that he was making on the studio business side of things, where we got a report that nearly 37% of users who purchased Astro Bot had not purchased a first-party title from us in the last 2 years. So nearly 4 out of 10 users on PlayStation had not bought a first-party game for the last 2 years. And you think about what first-party games have come out on PlayStation in the last 2 years. Astro Bot is then serving a demographic which was previously left untapped, except for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and the first Astro Bot game. There's been bugger all platformers. And Sackboy Big Adventure was the other one. And bugger all platformers coming out in the 4 years since this thing launched. So there's a market that they've now has piqued their interest. So watch this space. The percentage of younger age groups and families purchasing the title were much higher than other titles, and the title is contributing significantly to a widening of the user base through the acquisition of new users and the expansion of our title portfolios. So it's cheaper to make a platformer that appeals to kids and families than it is to make a massive MMO online shooter. So guess where the redirection of funding may be headed for these couple of studios that didn't hit the mark? I dare say that Team Asobi and probably one other is going to be charged with making something like this, but it gives their third-party partners an opportunity to engage and make these games as well, because now there's a market to build them and sell them. Doing 1.5 million copies in 9 weeks since its launch, it doesn't sound like a huge number, but something that only cost, $50 million to make, that's a huge amount of return. And it doesn't take long. This may actually get another Ratchet and Clank game bumped up the list, probably to the detriment of Wolverine, but that may be the outcome here. They'll pull out Rift Apart, dust it off, blow the cobwebs out of it, reuse the assets and tune it up to put another game together in 12 months, and Insomniac launches another banger and they sell 3 or 4 million in the first couple of weeks. That's why not? If there's a market out there for it. The issue around Concord being shut off, and some commentary there around putting some more gating processes and review processes and a few other bits and pieces in that development system. I don't know. That's a bit of a mixed message. Intend to share the lessons learned from success and failures with the studios. They built a very solid, very usable gunplay mechanic with Concord, and it, for all reports, was brilliant. Was easy, good to use, fun to play with, and that was all good. The issues were in other parts of that game. I wouldn't say it's a waste of money. It's probably not the best use of money, but it's not a waste of money to have something like that mechanical gunplay thing being built and ready to reskin and use somewhere else. If you've got other studios that are looking at doing first-person shooter games. And it may be that it doesn't have to be a first-party studio, it could be a third-party studio. But if you've got that sitting on the shelf and good to dust off and use, then that's some success to pull out of a failure. But the game itself lasting not very long with minimal engagement, the amount of money that they put in. Now, whether you believe it's 400 million or whether you just take the Sony chip in for it being somewhere south of 200 million, it doesn't matter. It makes sense to not run a game chewing up server capacity when you've got other games that need that server capacity about to hit the market. But I do find it interesting that they say we'll go and lick our wounds, and our initial response to this is we're going to do more QA. We're going to be more stricter on games getting passed and out into the market. Yeah, great, but that could come at the cost of creativity. And that's something that Sony has been hammered for in the past, is that the QA process doesn't allow their studios to be creative enough. And if the initial response from Toki, which is a member of the Bean Counter Club, is we're not going to piss money up the wall on creative shit, we only want stuff that we know will sell in the market, I don't know if that's the right answer. But buying the studio, they got it cheap, but really worth that much money to get a really good first-person shooter mechanic setup that you can just wheel out and throw a new skin on and off we go. Probably cheaper than building it in-house. But, you're pulling silver linings off a pretty big storm. But, these things happen. They don't hit the mark every time. It'll be interesting to see what the second phase of the wash-up of that is. Because my understanding from what I had been told and what I had heard, what I've been told and what I have seen, is a large number of the Concord team that stayed around after launch to do the roadmap were redeployed into a different department within PlayStation, which also happens to be within or right next to the same department that all those Bungie people got deployed into to support live service game development. So there's something outside of these major studios which has probably got more people in it now than what Naughty Dog has, supporting something to do with live service games. And none of them are getting laid off, and they keep pouring more people into it. So they're cooking something in the background. I can't get my hands on someone close enough to tell me what it is. But you've got Blundell sitting in there, and you've got other people attached to this project that's a first-person shooter, and now they've got a mechanic built that works really well. I don't know. We'll wait and see what comes out of it. But, there's some mixed messaging, read between the lines stuff out of these comments regarding the game stuff. Regarding the financial stuff, it's cut and dry. This thing didn't perform. We're going to cut it loose.
Yeah, one of the things that Toki said, excuse me, that PlayStation needs to have more detailed checks and gates, such as more user tests. He said we need to repeat those gates more so that we could have caught and determined whether that would be accepted by users or not. We need to have more information that will enable us to make more sound decisions. At least looking back at the past, I think we need to go back to the basics and make it really stronger.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say the increase in the gating process for QA may just kill a lot of creativity. So things that were 50-50 that probably got through on Concord, I'd expect them to get through in the next little while, and it probably means that Fair Games and Marathon's are going to have a very long, hard conversation with a few senior people around does this get to go or does this not get to go?
Yeah, we did also get numbers from Sony that Astro Bot has sold more than 1.5 million copies since its launch 2 months ago. That was something else that came out as well. Yeah, and I see people like on the internet arguing about that. So ridiculous. Like, oh, it didn't do well. You don't know that. You don't know the budget. I'm going to guess that by the way the game looks and that those were existing assets. I'm sure the game wasn't very costly in that regard. So
what was what was it? It wasn't sold for $70, was it?
It was sold for $70.
It was $70. It was a $70. That's right. Sorry.
So what's 1.5
million?
Talking.
I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna do a calculation.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying. I've seen some people have conversations around 1.5 it not being good. It's just like, okay, well, you don't look. It wouldn't surprise me if that game costs less than $50 million to develop.
Look. The reality is, BRAP. The reality is, right. We celebrate multiple games selling 1 million copies, and every time it's a certain company selling 1 million plus, it's always, oh well, that's probably not good enough. I mean, we know the MO at this point, right? Like 1.5 million for, like you said, a game that most likely didn't cost them that much. Like you said, several existing assets already. We know that the game is selling. Selling
Falky,
fine.
It's $60, not $70.
Great.
I'm sorry. 60, not 70, Falky.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, the game is doing great, right? 1.5 million. It's not going to stop selling just because they reported 1.5 million sold. Like, this is another thing people keep doing. We're just talking about a drove of new console owners coming into this, right? PlayStation reporting 65 million plus sold, and that number is just going to skyrocket over the course of next year. Between a lot of the major releases coming along for the rest of those people that have yet to upgrade to PS5. Like, come on, man. Like, I mean, we know what it is at this point. Like, the game did great. I enjoyed it, which is saying a lot. Given, again, like I've stated prior, I'm not a fan of platformers, but the game was phenomenal. So that already says a lot coming from me. But yeah, I don't think they have any issue with that number, and it'll continue to sell, probably into the 2 to 3 million range over time, and they'll make plenty out of it. And like Falky said, most likely this will let them pay attention to another untapped demographic that they weren't really, hitting really hard on from a first party perspective. So I think it's going to be great for them.
If you take the 37% having not bought a game in the last 2 years, that's 550 plus thousand users that have now re-engaged with a first party studio. And if the budget was 60 million to make it, and they've sold 1.5 million at $60, that's $90 million in revenue. It's a 50% return on investment in 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Exactly.
If you want to argue, for those who genuinely think this is a flop and a failure, and that Sony should pack up and go home, go and argue with yourself in the mirror. You've got no clue, and you're not worth our time.
So what was the calculation again, Falky? I missed that. What did you come up with?
All right. A $60 million budget, including marketing,
mm-hmm.
and 1.5 million copies sold at $60 US is a 50% return on investment.
So you're saying it's you're estimating a 50%
cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, covered cost and made 50%. That's 50% ROI.
Oh, you're botting there, Falky.
Sorry,
Okay.
it's a 50% after break even, a 50% return on investment.
So you're saying after break even, it's a 50% return.
Yeah, they made 50.
Yeah, we're one is 50% ROI. Okay, thank you. Again, that's an estimate,
Sorry.
just Falky estimating. We're not saying that this is in fact true. Just want to make that clear here. We're just spitballing, but
it's not a 100% down to the cent. That's based off estimates of, sensible estimates. If the thing was $100 million to make, I'd be sitting here scratching my head going, well, that doesn't make sense looking at their overall financial performance, because if Astro Bot cost $100 million to make, it should be 3 studios in the US which should have been shut by now with the amount of money it would cost to be making those games. They're not. So, and similarly, Ratchet and Clank and Rift Apart, and those ones didn't have over $100 million budgets to make those, and they didn't go much over 100. I think Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, was 120 million, and that thing is, the costs to make Astro Bot are a lot less than that. So, I'd say that those estimates would be there or thereabouts in the ballpark. But it's the number of new users that it has attracted to the ecosystem that is an important piece, because the ARPU is maintaining a higher point. They're going to spend money in the ecosystem, and that's what they want, new users in the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Falky. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I don't mean to cough. So like I said, I'm still getting over this, whatever I had, cold or whatever. All right, Falky, I do want to move on to something else here as relates to Dragon Age, the Veilguard. Nate, I know you've been playing it. Falky, I don't know if you played it. I haven't played it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Game
Not
Logic.
Me, sorry.
What's that?
Not me, not yet. Sorry.
No worries. And then Logic, I know you've spent maybe an hour or two in the game, I think, or more than that now.
I put in about 6 hours in the game so far.
6 hours, okay. So yeah, I just want to get your perspectives on Veilguard, what you think so far. Logic, I'll go with you first. What are your thoughts so far? 6-7 hours in the game.
I'm having a blast. I'm enjoying it. I've made a lot of comparisons to Diablo 4, even though obviously the presentation perspective isn't the same. A lot of kind of the grind and the do loop and the progression and the things that kind of hook me with Diablo games are kind of present there in Dragon Age: The Veilguard. There's a lot of depth in terms of progression that I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of. Character creator kind of strikes the right balance for me. I'm the type of person who likes a character creator that has depth if I choose to go into it, but also has shortcuts, because lots of times when I want to get a game started, I just don't want to be bothered. I don't spend a lot of time with eye shape and eyebrows, and that stuff is a lot of cruft that I don't personally need. I felt it was pretty interesting, and I liked how, the most impactful thing in my opinion from the character creator is the background selections that you make. Those things get referenced in the dialogue in the game and actually make a difference in at least how you interact with the characters. I've heard some other comments about people, from people's perspective on some of those comments aren't particularly impactful, or your character will say something and then an NPC will say the thing right back to will just repeat the thing, why did your character bother saying that in the first place? I haven't come across that just yet, and I don't know that it would bother me hugely. If I came across that in the game. I like the combat. In some cases, there's almost a little too many options. I sometimes criticize games a little bit for this. I like being given lots of tools and tactical options, but there's a admittedly arbitrary kind of tip over point to where I feel like, okay, well now you've driven it to the point where Like I can't remember like what goofy control combination I have to hit that one particular move. And so I never wind up never using that, so that now it becomes like not impactful. And like again, I didn't need to be bothered with that being included in my array of powers or whatever. Slow-mo made the comment on Twitter, I think today or maybe yesterday, that he feels like the most fun class to play is the mage. That's the class I'm playing right now, and I agree. It's a ton of fun. There's one fight that I've encountered so far that I'm like, okay, this fight is some BS. The dude has like 3 different modes, and there's not like there's a limited amount of like extra health pickup, so you just kind of have to get through the battle. There are times where I'm not particularly certain that that your companions are all that useful. Like it seems like many of the AI opponents that come on the screen like just drive right past your companions and constantly target you. And I'm okay taking my more than my fair share of bullet sponge focus, but I'm like there are some points that I'm like, come on, dude. Like the other dude was standing right in front of you blasting you. You would think that would be your priority target instead of me, who's all the way on the other side of the combat arena. So that happens, but some of those are kind of more nitpicky things to me. The big thing for me is it's a very accessible game, and I don't mean that. Obviously, I have my pet peeve about the application of the term accessibility outside of its terms, and I'm not referring to accessibility of people who have special needs for interfaces and things, but I just mean in terms of I do a lot of picking games up and putting them down, and then like not coming back to them sometimes for a very long time. The games that not necessarily bother me, but it's just a thing when a game is like there's just like a significant learning curve to like onboard back to the game, like No Man's Sky. I think Nate and I were talking about that one a couple of weeks ago. This is not that kind of game. Like I don't feel like I'm gonna have a ton to of like, oh crap, where was I in the story, or how do you use these powers again? Everything is pretty much straightforward. And I feel like there's some pretty good quality of life hooks that lend itself to that type of play style.
Yeah, Logic. I now hearing you describe the game, I heard you mention Diablo, playing as the mage. I haven't talked to Slow-mo about. I've been meaning to. I was meant to reach out to him tonight to see if he could join the show because I'm really interested in his perspective. He's a big Dragon Age fan, but you've certainly piqued my interest.
Playing it like nonstop.
Yeah, you've piqued my interest here, Logic. But what say you and Nate? What are your impressions so far?
Yeah, so I mean, in general. Like Logic said, from what I've played, I've been having a good time. I'm enjoying what's been on offer. I think I'm a little further now than he may have been, and I've also been watching Priscilla play, who's further than both of us. Priscilla's probably about 10 to 15 hours or more, and another friend of mine who's been playing it, who's playing something entirely like a different build. So I've gotten to see a bunch of different aspects of it. Initially, like I said, because this is such a big part of something like Dragon Age, like he mentioned the character creator. So for me, the character creator is great from a face and hair customization option. The game's default hair selection, which you'll understand this if you play RPGs, is probably one of the best I've ever seen in a video game, period. Where you can customize your character. Usually it's kind of left up to modders to create hair that doesn't suck in character created RPGs. So shout out to the team and whoever did that. And like I said, the facial options, like he mentioned as well, eye customization, eye color, eyeshadow, all that stuff. You could really go crazy with that stuff. Which to me is the other part, which I separate this because these are two different parts. And obviously if you've been on Twitter, you've seen it, but the lack of body customization is kind of annoying in that regard when everything else is so customizable. You're either built like Santa Claus or you're like a size 0. So like those are like your two options. So you can't be like a really buff dude or
built like Santa Claus, like
yeah,
morbidly obese.
Yeah, like you just have belly. Like you just have a big belly. Like Like, so
Is it
it's
is it from like
fat and
visiting
skinny.
is it from like visiting pubs and like indulging yourself in ale and turkey legs? Like, is that?
Man, it seems like it, man. I was like, the character slider has like a lot of as far as like body proportions, has like very little nuance. Uh so it's pretty funny to play around with it. Like I said, you're just like I said, you're either just fat or you're a size 0. Like there's no in between.
But
But,
fat guy slapping
yeah.
wenches at the bar, he's just like it's crazy.
So
It's crazy.
Yeah,
basically,
man, it's
so basically, you're
hilarious.
morbidly obese or you're a heroin addict.
Yes, basically, yeah. You got two options.
Two
like
options,
you can't,
two options.
you know. I mean, number one, I mean, like you said it earlier, you're Latino, right? You know about the thick persuasion of the Latino women, right? Like you're not building one of those.
The
in this
what?
game.
The what? Whoa, the
Nah,
what?
Brad doesn't know about that.
Whoa. Well, first of all, I do know about that because I am Latino. BRAP is Latino. I know about that. But they're not all like that. But yes, I'm aware of that. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
But
You
yeah,
hear
you
him looking
definitely.
over his shoulder to see
not
where his
building that.
wife is, can't you?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Falky.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, man, that like there's no nuance as far as like that building, you know, and I'm you know, I like to have characters of all different shapes and sizes. You know, I've already built 3 different characters in the game, trying all the different types of characters. Funny enough, this is the first one where I didn't build a mage first. I usually that's kind of a joke with me and Priscilla. She always, you know, is like, oh, is there a sorcerer or something? Because I know you picked that, and like that was actually the last one.
Who's got the better PC build, real quick?
The better PC build?
Yeah, you or Priscilla.
She's got our builds are exactly the same. So
okay,
yeah,
so
if Brad, you know Priscilla's out in the crowd. What are you expecting Nate to say?
I know. I just want to, you know.
But
she's saying me.
If I had to separate it, I got you because you know we build them, so I know what's up. So I'd probably give it to her because if it would come down to the difference. Yeah, well, yeah, she's got 3, number one, but she also has the better motherboard. So her motherboard has like 1 more M.2 slot than mine. So there you go. That's the separator because they both have 64 gigs of RAM, 13900K, and a 4090. So, but yeah, so she's got me beat there. But yeah, no, like I said, that's probably the biggest drawback for me. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably look to some mods in the future to build some stuff like that. I do understand from a game design perspective that that's probably more of a limitation for clipping, right? You know, to prevent armor from, you know, clipping into somebody's, you know, double D boobs and stuff like that. But again, I didn't build the game, so that's not my problem. I just know what I want. So, but I understand from a game designer's perspective and all the intricate armor and stuff like that that's in the game, why they would design it that way. And that's another aspect that's really beautiful in this game. Visual fidelity is phenomenal. I mean, I can only speak from my perspective, which is playing the game maxed out on PC.
Facts. It's a gorgeous looking game. I feel like that specific element is being very much undersung in the ongoing discourse and media. Like it's just it's a great game to behold. Yeah,
it is. Every place I've been in. Go for it.
Real quick, Joe. By the way, we have like 65 people here watching. Please hit that like button. So you mentioned the visuals, PC max settings. I've heard some complaints around the dialogue that the dialogue isn't that good. The writing isn't that good. What are your thoughts there?
So I mean, like I said, I made a tweet a couple weeks ago now about the lesser level of accepted dialogue and written, you know, literacy going on in a lot of video games lately. And while the general story overview and the stuff that you encounter early on, I think is perfectly fine, right? It's not blowing anybody away. Now later, like I told you, I have gotten to see some of the other stuff later, and I'm not talking about the 2 minutes of nonsense that people keep repeating on Twitter. I'm talking about actual other deliverable dialogue. And I like I said, I think it's okay. Like it's passable. But I think what more so it comes down to is how some of the characters are built out. One of the characters you encounter later is built more like a angsty, annoying teenager. When their entire race is a group of warriors who will demolish your entire civilization if you mess with them the wrong way. So it's kind of an oddity, and the way that character is written, is obviously meant to be that way, but on top of that, their line dialogue and delivery is pretty terrible. Like they're definitely the worst by far. So I think that's really more so the thing that people are encountering with this particular character. And it honestly brings down the level of the rest of the cast, because some of the cast I think is really great. You'll hear a lot of people talk about Nev, who a lot of people are going to encounter very early on. I mean, you'll encounter her probably 5 minutes in. And she has great dialogue delivery. I've been a fan of her so far. Her character is full of, quips and all kinds of, hilarious responses. And I mean, she'll go for you blow for blow, and going back and forth in dialogue jabs. Like, so some of it is really, really great. And then some of it just falls off a cliff. And it's like, that's where you're seeing that disparity, which is not common from BioWare, right? Like, BioWare is known to maintain a high level of story and dialogue throughout their game, and typically just elevate as you go along, right? Anyone who has been a fan of the Mass Effect trilogy knows just how, great and amazing these characters can be, right? We still talk about them to this day, right? Because the caliber that they were built to was so great and so in depth that people fell in love with these characters for years and years and years, long after, we've all completed these games, and we frequently go back and play these games. Garrus Vicarian, Tali Zora Voss Normandy. Yes, that is her name after the fact if you played the game. All these people, Rex, and I know you've played him. Yeah, the Elusive Man. Again, phenomenally written, right? Like, in that delivery, just the beginning of that game. I mean, the way his dialogue delivery.
I mean, he's also voiced by Martin Sheen, so that helps. But
Bro, it was beautiful.
But the characters, I mean, to your point, I mean, the characters in that game are so memorable. But go ahead.
So memorable. Yeah. But yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. So like a lot of stuff is like, some of these characters, I believe, people will love and be a little more memorable. But that's the key to the sauce when it comes to BioWare, right? Creating these memorable characters, and things of that nature. And I think that's where some people are like, some of these characters will be remembered, but for the wrong reasons. And I think that's really the disparity that you're seeing from a lot of people who have completed the game, right? That's why you're seeing this huge gap, right? Where people who are playing the game now initially are like, man, no, it's pretty cool, because like I'm at that factor now, right? This is Priscilla's first Dragon Age, and she's having a ball, right? She's yet to encounter that character yet, by the way, that I was saying has like terrible dialogue delivery. And it's a disservice, because honestly, Priscilla, and the way that Priscilla loves to go to the gym and all this other stuff, she would love the Kunari, the way that they were built out in other Dragon Age games. And that whole warrior personality thing that they had going, it's still here, but not in the character that's in your team. So they kind of took that away. It's like, imagine if Rex was like a punk, you know what I'm saying, compared to the rest of the Krogan. Like, that would be weird. Like, because that's not how the Krogan are built, you know what I mean? Like, they are a force to be reckoned with to, fight the worst the universe has to offer. So yeah, I think that's more so, well, you're getting, I don't think it's going to break any barriers, in the dialogue department. Like I said, so far it's been okay. I do disagree with some people. Some people think that Dragon Age has never been funny, though. Like the whole dialogue jabs and like funny back and forths. And I'm like, no, I mean, Dragon Age has always had moments where they've you've gone back and forth with your characters, and they will, give you crap constantly. So I don't know why people think that there's never been like it just has this super serious tone where they're like, it's all, we're gonna die and go for the blood. And it's like, no, like, yes, it's been dark, and you're like, and it's crazy, in Dragon Age Origins specifically, but even then, like Morgan, everybody's favorite witch, even back then, she would constantly joke in the worst situations. Like, so I don't know why people think it's like Dragon Age has never been funny, and specifically Varix, who
because
is
maybe
one
they
of your
haven't
main
played Dragon
characters
Age.
like
I
that.
mean,
that's another thing, right? Like, I'm like, maybe it was like, if they did, like, did you even pay attention? Because I'm like, again, like I said, dialogue and story and stuff is incredibly important for me as an RPG player first. Like I said, I always tell people RPGs over everything. If there's an RPG coming out, you ain't got to ask me what I'm playing. So like, that's how it is for me, but it's mainly because of the story and the way characters are written in these games and so on and so forth. Do I think everything's got to break, the barrier and be the, Oscar winning nominee? No, but I still expect, I have an expectation for RPGs to be better written than every other genre. So again, so far I'm not running it through the floor or anything. Like, it's been passable. And everything else really shines. So I agree with Logic there. Like, the combat, all the other stuff has been really fun. I think it's all really well done. The fluidity of the combat, when you do get a chance to jump in it, you'll understand BRAP, but the fluidity of the combat is phenomenal as well. So it's not just that it's a faster pace. It's very, very smooth, and the traversal through the world is kind of the same way. But yeah, I mean, I'll have to see as I personally get further later. Like I said, I've just been privy to a lot of that stuff because, like I said, almost a large part of the people I've gamed with for a couple of years are all playing it. So I've seen some of the later dialogue. So I definitely agree, at least as far as the one character who's the Kunari on your team, I think has whoever voiced that character did, or however they told them to act, at least as that character, the line and dialogue delivery is terrible, and the character just comes off as annoying. And it's like imagine, the suicide mission, in Mass Effect 2. Imagine like look at the team you assembled for that, right? And then imagine having like a random annoying teenager like on your team. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. Like, the person doesn't fit. Everybody here is about that life. Everybody here could kill you in 17 different ways before you blinked. And then there's the teenager who is, angsty and confused and weird. And it's like, why are you here again? Like, we'll drop you off at the next station. So I think there's that very stark contrast when you encounter this character, and that's what's throwing a lot of people, and rightfully so. Like, I get it. If you're gonna write something write it well, make it fit. And again, to the tune of one of your favorite games, right? Baldur's Gate 3, there's a reason there's no complaint of that from that series, right? Because everything, regardless of all the different possibilities and things that happen in that game, it's all incredibly well written and nuanced in a way that doesn't take away from the game, right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I have almost had to punch Asterion in the face about 67 times because he's a horny vampire, but in that way.
Oh man, not Asterion. Oh my god, he really is.
But you get it, right? Like, I mean, you can write quirks into characters without them feeling like they're out of place. That's more so the thing I think that throws people for a loop later on. But yeah, overall, not bad. I think I'm a pretty good judge early on of how I'm gonna feel later with a lot of games. I think I'm gonna come out 7.5 to an 8. I think that's a solid get for it. Like I said, I think everything else is done really well. Like I said, because a lot of these other parts do matter. Like I said, visual fidelity, again, I can't speak on it enough. Shout out to the people who got PS5 Pros like myself. I'm not playing it there, but if you are playing it on PlayStation and you got a PS5 Pro, that's going to be great. The enhancements they're going to add there are going to be phenomenal. And you're just going to get a much better experience closer to what I get on the PC, man. It's just, again, not a game that I would skip. I wouldn't recommend like a skip or something crazy. Right now, I mean, if you are a Dragon Age, if you're a Dragon Age fan, you like the general lore and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think you're going to have a bad time with this game, but if you're looking for Dragon Age Origin, like, that ship sailed 15 years ago. Like, that's not coming back.
So, Logic, let me ask you a question, sir. Is this a goatee?
No, I wouldn't say so. No,
is this a game BRAP would enjoy? That's the other question. Two-part question. Go ahead, Ben.
Probably not, because BRAP only likes playing games that are in the GOTY conversation. I mean, so where I sit with this game, and I'll draw lines to just how we run our show on enough to keep going. We don't do Game of the Year because we feel like there's specific qualifications around holding that type of a discussion and a vote, etc. We do. I've mentioned this before. We do gaming superlative awards, but our key category that's most analogous to Game of the Year is game that I had the most fun playing in a year, and that has a different. Right, there's a different taxonomy around it, right, when we have that discussion. And so this, for me, this is tending towards maybe the most fun I've had playing a game this year, because it's in my wheelhouse. It's the type of thing that I prefer. It has a lot of the build components that I like. And so it is tending in that direction for me. But as far as like stacking up against the other things that are going to be in the Game of the Year discussion, like as driven by the media, and I would even say like the other game award shows, right, that are driven by members of the industry and other voting bodies. I think for some of those awards, this may get into the nomination category, but I don't think it'll be selected as Game of the Year.
Okay. Yeah,
I personally don't even think it's going to make it, because I've played the rest of the games that I think will, and I don't think it's going to make, because in the end, there's usually the maximum number of selections is usually 6, right? And I can already tell you who's going to, largely who's going to be in that discussion, unless people feel some type of way about it. But I mean, you've played Black Myth Wukong. That game is phenomenal.
Black Myth
Astro
Wukong's
Bot.
good. Astro Bot's good. Astro Bot's not a Game of the Year for me, but go ahead.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just like as far as like what it was rate, like, because we're talking about like industry ratings, right? So like people who are going to rate on this are the people who rated those games. So from those publications, right? As far as like the actual game awards, right? So that's largely under the discussion. And then you've got Metaphor, which definitely should be in there. Whether they're a fan or not, I don't really care.
That is my Game of the Year, by the way.
Yeah, that's my Game of the Year. Like, that is unquestionable.
If you're not playing Metaphor v Fantasio, you need to. It's so good. But go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think if it does,
there can only be so many JRPGs. Like it's a JRPG heavy year, right? There could only be so many, right? I mean, there's probably only going to be one JRPG, maybe two, right, in those voting nomination.
Yeah, I think one. Yeah, they're hard pressed to get into the Game of the Year conversation. So I think if it's one, it should be Metaphor.
Well, if there's only one going to be in there, that would go to Elden Ring being a JRPG, wouldn't it?
Oh man!
Well, Falky,
you want the DLC in there?
Falky, I was told DLCs can't be Game of the Year. I disagree with that. A DLC is essentially a new game, in my opinion. It's just a part 2, if you will.
And I see a lot of the media still high on Final Fantasy Part 2.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one.
I'll reset. I suppose I'll ask the question. The Dragon Age game, I haven't played it, and it looks intriguing to me. I've not played a Dragon Age game before. I'm a bit gun shy with EA games, just in general. Same as I am gun shy with Ubisoft games for a different reason. But do you think the difference? You think having it a pro enhanced version of this game will have any impact on how people rate the game?
No, because again, like visually, I mean, I think if you're playing it on PlayStation already, you're already cool with how it looks. Like, and I've heard from someone personally I know who's playing it on PlayStation who also has a PC, and they're satisfied with how it looks. So, I mean, that's going to just maybe improve a little bit of the visual fidelity and some of the frame rate, perhaps. But I mean, his experience so far has been great. So I don't think the pro version is going to change the way people rate it, because the negatives that people are putting on it are not visual based. So
That's also because console gamers just take whatever they can get.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we bend over that barrel like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, I just think that that's the main reason why you won't see a change in how people are rating it. Because I mean, it's a great, from what I understand, it plays great on at least PS5. I couldn't tell you about Xbox, but on PS5, I know several people who are playing it there, and they're perfectly happy with it. I know the person I was speaking of in particular. I know he did get a PS5 Pro, so I'll have to get his feedback on the changes to that. I know they just released a patch as well that fixed a ton of bugs and some other issues with the game. So I got to check out the patch notes for that as well, 1.09. So I think some of those fixes and stuff will have more of an impact when people play later, rather than the people playing right now. But yeah,
I suppose I'm led to ask that question because the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth,
Mhm.
as stunning as that game was initially,
yeah,
and everyone whoever has listened to me bitch and moan about that game for the last 6 months, the Pro version looks like it is a monstrous step forward in the fidelity of that game. I wonder if that was curious to know whether that would make an impact on people going back and revising that to see if it makes it in the GOTY conversations. But it'll be
I mean,
interesting to see
I think it
what does land
already
there.
I think it already is for a lot of people. The people that loved Final Fantasy VII Rebirth have already decided it's in Game of the Year, category. And I think this just enhances that because, like you said, I've seen the same thing from a lot of people who got their pros and they went back and played it, and the increase in image quality is crazy. I'm one of those
Yeah.
people that's going to go back to it because I haven't finished it. So I'm actually glad I waited, and I'll finish it on my pro. But one of the biggest things for me is going back and forth between that visual fidelity mode and the 60 FPS, and I had to have the higher frame rate. And I kind of picked like the middle ground one where it went in between, which was a really great mode, by the way. Like, I mean, if I didn't have a pro, I'd stick to that mode. But now I don't have to worry about that. I get to get this crazy visual quality, which you can see from, I think it was John from Digital Foundry was saying it's better quality, image quality than the fidelity mode on the base PS5, and yet you get to play at a high FPS at the same time. So that's exactly what I wanted the Pro for. So yeah, I think it's going to definitely affect some future people who get to play it. People who haven't even touched it, they're gonna come in enjoying all the greatness right off the bat.
So you're enjoying the PS5 Pro so far? Because I've heard some conversation in some people suggested that this it needs to there needs to be newer games showcasing it, and I'm like, I can understand that perspective. I mean, but it's also, I think, for people who also want better performing games they want to go back and play, or for people who may be new to the ecosystem who are interested in a high end console that can do those things, offer all those bells and whistles, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like people think it's just the higher games, right? Like one of the games that was having performance issues was Metaphor, right? Which largely, I mean, ultimately, it didn't bother me, whatever performance issues, because they were being really nitpicky, particularly in Metaphor, right? Because a lot of the slowdown or quote unquote FPS issues were like transition screens. Things where it's like, oh, it transitions here and the FPS drops. Or I was standing in a city next to a stall and the FPS drops. Like, it wasn't really that serious. While you're playing the game, like, nothing really dropped or anything, right? But immediately booting that game up on the PS5 Pro, all of that's gone. Any hitching, any momentary hiccups, any hesitation whatsoever, even in the menu system, whatever, is gone. It is flawless. It plays on an entirely different level of fluidity, and that's a game that, again, is turn-based, right? Like, and I can immediately tell you from that was the first game I booted up, that it got rid of any of those little slight hesitations or whatnot that were going on in Metaphor and knocked it out the park. And that's without a patch, mind you. So that's just raw, hey, playing it on the PS5 Pro, and this is what you get out the gate. So yeah, I mean it's been beautiful, BRAP. I've been loving it, and that's without me going back and playing a bunch of the other stuff. And other people are just going to benefit from it even more, going back to play some of these games. And I'm going to benefit from it. Future games, Wolverine, Death Stranding 2. I can't even tell you right now what Death Stranding 1 did on the PS4.
Just released on
alone.
the Xbox, by the way. I want to mention that as well.
It did. Hopefully they actually play it. And, that's the real question, it gets some people to play games instead of just buying them and taking screenshots. Let's do that.
Well, they didn't play Hellblade 2 in any sort of fashion, and that was one of their highest self-promoted walking sims. So it's just
it was.
They don't, if they get this, having screamed and carried on like petulant kids for years about how dare things be money hatted and locked up, whatever the back, well, I'll probably go into it a bit more detail another time, but the back end deal that gets that IP back in Kojima's hands, and he can then get it published onto Xbox platforms. If they then don't go and play it, then again, go talk to yourself in a mirror, and just because all you want to do is complain, you don't actually want to enjoy gaming.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about, man. That's why I'm here talking with you guys. That's why I do the other podcasts that I do. That's why I have a small circle of people that I can have these nuanced conversations with, where we get to talk about games we actually enjoy, that we're actually playing, and we're having that conversation. The same reason why BRAP asked me and Logic specifically about Dragon Age, because we're playing it. You know what I mean? Like, these are the important things, man. And these are the people that companies need to pay attention to the feedback coming from, right? From people who are actually fans of their work, who are playing their work, who are putting in the time and investment into their hobby in more ways than one, and actually appreciating gaming. And yeah, I mean, for me in particular, like you said, Brad, the Pro is phenomenal so far, and it's just going to continue to get better as things go forward, as they come out with more updates and so on and so forth. And I'm all about that premium experience. So that's why I got both.
Can I then ask, and I'll pitch it to both of you gentlemen, but I'll defer to you first, Nate. I've never played a Dragon Age. Is this a game that I would enjoy, given that I enjoyed The Witcher and similar RPGs in that action? Is this something that I would enjoy playing? Or is it something I should consider playing?
I mean, based on what you said earlier, because I know you said sometimes you don't have a problem waiting for sales and stuff like that. As a first-time player, I mean, I think you could. I don't know enough about how you play, like, your enjoyment of certain games. The Witcher is a phenomenally written title, especially Witcher 3. But I mean, to me, I'm confident recommending the game from a gameplay perspective, visual fidelity and stuff like that. I mean, I think it holds up. Based on what you stated, I mean, it's Black Month, as I like to call it, instead of Black Friday, because sales are starting immediately. So I say pick it up on sale and give it a shot. If you're curious about the story in a slight extension, right? Because all you really need to have understood prior to this game is Dragon Age Inquisition. So prime example, I'll tell you what I did, because like I said, Priscilla's playing it, and she had not played the prior one, so she had a slight question about the Dreadwolf, who is Solus, or the elf that you'll see in a lot of the trailers. So what I did is I just looked up Dragon Age Veilguard, the story so far, and I think it was Game Rant or Gaming Bolt. They have two separate ones. One is about just Solus, or the Dreadwolf, and it's like 11 minutes long, and they basically just explain to you everything about him. So, like, if you want, like, the whole thing, what happened with him with the Inquisition, what he's all about, where was he before, why is he the way he is, like 11 minutes and you're good to go. So, and there's also a 40-minute one that tells you everything that happened about Dragon Age prior. So if you get curious about the other stuff even further back, you can. Do you need it? No, because Priscilla is wholesale enjoying the game. Like, she played it, I think, for an hour and a half. Maybe not even that. I think she wasn't even out of the prologue. She wasn't even out of the prologue, and she wanted to buy the game. So she was playing from our Steam family, from one of our friends that bought it, and she's like, "I want it right now." So we bought it for her, and she jumped in, and she's playing right now. In fact, while we're on the podcast, and she is having a ball. So yeah, first timers can definitely jump in and enjoy the game, no problem. I'm a lore buff, you know what I'm saying? So I like to know what I'm jumping into, and I've thankfully played all the Dragon Ages before. But yeah, like I said, it was no problem to like update her, because like I said, Solus himself, the main cast that's all been in this, is all really just primarily from Dragon Age Inquisition. So that's all you could, like I said, you could just hit up the story so far if you're curious, but you don't even need that. Like they give you like a synopsis in the beginning, and it's like, hey, this is this person, and we need to, we need to go get them. Like it's very, very quick, very first time Dragon Age fan jump in. But yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely enjoy it. Like I said, I just recommend, my biggest recommendation as someone who hasn't completed it yet, rather than giving a rating or something, I would just say, my favorite reference to this is just pick it up on sale. In EA games, like a lot like Ubisoft games, especially this time of the year, are definitely gonna go on sale. So if you could see it for maybe $34.99 or something like that, the standard edition. I don't even think, because I bought the deluxe, but that's because I'm that person that buys the deluxe of everything, because I don't like to miss nothing. But I don't even think that's even necessary. So standard edition, like $34.99, $29.99. Go ahead and jump in, and I think you'll be good to go.
Excellent. I got Dragon Age Inquisition for like 10 Australian dollars a couple of years ago digitally. So I might line that one up and have a crack at it. But yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I've if you're enjoying the gameplay that much, for an action, it's an action RPG or turn-based RPG.
It's action. Yeah, it's definitely full on action.
If you're enjoying it that much, and you genuinely sound excited talking about it, so it's and I know you and I play very similar games, and we have very similar interests in our games. So no, that's great to hear. Thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. No problem.
You, Logic, have you got anything to add?
No, I mean, same thing. I think they give you enough of a primer to kind of get your feet underneath you and have enough of a sense of the world. I think I heard Nate mention it. This also partially answers your question, but I'm gonna vector off of it to a slightly separate discussion. You're going to get enough of exposure to kind of get grounded in the world too through the opening sequence. And with that, I will say, again, not enough being said about that opening sequence. One of the things I love about a James Bond film, and I can probably just watch some of those great opening sequences and like not even watch the rest of the movie. The opening sequence for this game to me is very much a James Bond opening. It is very, very similar to the Division 2 opening, which I love, which is the Division 2. The game starts, and literally within, I would say, less than a minute and 30 seconds, you're in a firefight with a gun in your hand, taking down enemies and learning the game by doing. And that is very much so what this game is. It takes a little bit longer to get started. Like the first part of it, it is a little more scripted, but very shortly thereafter, you're in the fight, and it's got great cinematic moments. And a lot of times, like say with the original Tomb Raider reboot, the problem I had with that, and even some of the God of War Ragnarok stuff was, I don't like when games do a lot of whiplashing and wrenching you around, where they're constantly kind of taking the controller out of your hand. In a very non-deterministic way. This, at the moments where they do take control of you, just felt a little more natural and organic and didn't bother me as much. But I feel like the opening sequence is just like a lot of bombastic, great fun. And maybe, just as importantly, or maybe more importantly, like helps get you grounded right beyond what you get exposed to in the character creator.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. The opening sequence, like I told you, in about the first hour, Priscilla wanted to buy the game, and it has a lot to do with the way that opening sequence kicked off. Like she was like, "Oh, this is it," like jumping in. So yeah, that is a perfect way to state that. The opening sequence is really well done.
Do you guys feel like after that
Awesome.
opening sequence that the game still does a good job of keeping you engaged, keeping you your interest in and keeping you wanting to come back and playing the game?
For me, yeah, because I mean, I think the key thing that the game does from that, edge of your seat, opening sequences is then it immediately gets you into making choices about the progression of your character. I will say that part didn't feel super intuitive to me. Like the whole skill tree as a wheel. It looks and feels slightly like Diablo, but because it's completely concentric, it forces you to spend a lot of time looking at staring at the screen, going what, like which way does what node go, and what node has paths to another branch, and is it okay if I pick this one thing, or what's the consequence? So, and there's at least from what I saw when I went into it, there's like no explanation, right? And for the most part, I really praise this game for doing like just the right level of holding your hand but not holding your hand. In most cases, that it's like a perfect fit in that it doesn't do it too much. But the skill progression tree, I'm like, there's like at least, and admittedly, I mean, when I'm playing on a 34-inch ultra wide display, yes, very likely, and sometimes there are things off in a corner of the screen and I miss them. But I mean, as far as I could tell, in the wheel thing, there was nothing telling me. Now you do get mouse overs when you hover over stuff, but it didn't really tell me like what was going on. The one thing that I'll ladle on top of that, though, that is absolutely awesome about this game is that you can reskill with 0 penalty at any moment in the game. You can be in the middle of walking through the forest without a damn thing going on, not pre-battle, post-battle, or anything. You can go into that weapon wheel, in that skill tree wheel, refund every skill point, right? Reskill your character, and off you go, right? On carrying on your way.
I actually like that you can, you can reskill like that with no penalty. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That is
really cool.
A big pet peeve for one of the guys on my podcast. So when I told him that, his interest definitely went up quite a bit, because being able to respec is such a thing for him, because he's always so fearful about making the wrong decision in the skill tree. And you don't have to do that at all in this game, and that I thought that was a really great decision as well. Well, yeah. One other thing though, one thing I do dislike, I will have to say about the character or the selection wheel. But this is not exclusive to Dragon Age. I cannot stand when I have a selection and it says something. It says something that I want to select, and my character says something different than what I selected. That gets on my last nerve. So if it says like, "Hey, let's be friends," and then I press it, and my character's like, "Yo, what's up?" Or something entirely different, and I'm like, "Why did you say that?"
I actually thought that's actually appealing to me in this game, just because because there's a little, I don't necessarily want to say mystery, but there's a little surprise. Like it's like the character. I mean, what you need saying is the character doesn't literally say like what's listed in the dialogue tree selection is more so the sentiment behind what you're going to say, and not necessarily verbatim like the actual line that they're about to utter. So in that way, for me, it doesn't feel boring. So I mean, I get that sometimes what is uttered feels like it's like just categorically different than what you selected. But I feel like
that's when it annoys me.
Yeah, but I feel like I feel like 80% of the time it's like the sentiment of what he says, particularly when you, and again, I didn't go as far in my feeling on the dialogue, but the dialogue to me is very Whedon-esque, and if you don't like the Joss Whedon kind of style and approach that I think has become really endemic in Hollywood, and has so overall it's sophomoric dialogue. However, I would say if you watched the progression from Buffy to Angel to Firefly to Serenity onto even Avengers, there is a progression of the maturation and evolution of that dialogue style. But that dialogue style has become very rooted in Hollywood and very, very reflected in a lot of creative works that you wind up seeing. The dialogue is very much that, very much kind of like a CW kind of show. It is not Baldur's Gate 3. It is not The Walking Dead. It is not kind of like some of that heavier weight. It is not Diablo 4. It is not some of that kind of heavier weight dialogue. But like Nate said, I'm like, when I play video games, it's the same way like I watch movies. I don't need everything to be an Oscar winner, right? Or, a Golden Globe contender. But that being said, like, because that is sometimes kind of part of the humor, and in particular, that's when it feels particularly impactful. When you're having a lot of your exchange with Solus is very humor oriented. Particularly in what, like, there's barbs, right, going back and forth between you and Solus, while the two of you are also trying to actually exchange strategically pertinent information. But like those are some of those times, like, I feel like that it's most impactful when you pick a selection that conveys like the sentiment of what you're going to say, but what he pops off with is like an insult or a jab. So I don't know. It's, I'm torn on it too, right? There's sometimes that it seems a little wackadoodle, but a lot of the times I feel like I'm cool with it.
Yeah, agreed.
It's interesting. Yeah, I may have to check this out at some point. Not right now though. I'm playing some other games, so
I don't want you playing my game, BRAP. Just go on with your game of the year contenders and your bangers and your AAA games. We don't need you over here. We don't need you over here. We're good.
This could be a banger. Could be a banger potentially. I might like it. You never know. Look, I really enjoyed Rise Son of Rome, so you never know. Anything's possible.
So this is my key for me. This is my personal key thing, and I feel like this is like orients around a lot of the kind of angst. And maybe I'm being unfair, right, in stating it this way. For me, this game really reflects the ethos of like only play this game if you're just looking to have fun. If you're looking to play this game for the express purposes of stacking it up against each other games, putting it through stacked ranking, determining who gets laid off this quarter because they're a mid-pack performer, like, just don't play it. Like, you're not going to play the game and walk away with it with the output that you're looking for, right? To figure out, does it rank within one of the top 10 or 20 releases of this year? If you're really just looking for fun. Same thing with Diablo, right? Not since Diablo 2 has a Diablo game been a serious contender for game of the year, right? But they've been hella fun, and people put crap tons of time into them. And I love the grind and the do loop, and I'm going to keep going back to it. But I would never really seriously stack those things into contention for game of the year. Definitely in contention for my most fun game played, right, of the year. So I feel like if that's the thing people are looking for, which is what you're getting out of a lot of the reviews, because people are playing the game for the express purpose of reviewing it, not because it's a game that's fun for them, and they were headed out in that direction to play the game regardless. You're probably not going to get out of it what you want. But if you're just looking for a good time, and you're not necessarily looking it up to stack it up against, look, there have been a bunch of great JRPGs. There have been a lot of JRPGs this year that have punched above their weight that had no business being as good as they are. But like, this is not the game to compare to that great cavalcade of JRPGs, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, like, it sounds like if you're looking for a game to have some fun, it's not, I don't know, like you said, I think you said like trying to compare it to some of the other game of the year RPG contenders. This might not be for you then, right?
Yeah, and it's absolutely not Baldur's Gate 3. There were a couple questions in the chat about that. Like, I would never stack this game up against Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of quality, in terms of like dialogue, like Nate said. However, for me personally, where this game lands is what I found with Baldur's Gate 3, because I'm a person who tends to pick games up and then put them down and then go back to Baldur's Gate 3 has more and more, like, the more frequently I put it down, the less and less I want to go back to it. Because it is that kind of game. It is that kind of game where I'm going to go back to it and I'm like, Jesus, like, can I get like a last episode button or something in this game to give me like a rewind of like what happened for the last, because I'm like, where the hell was I? What part of the adventure am I in? Like, where the hell do I need to go? It's also Baldur's Gate, also open world, right? So there's nothing telling you where you need to go. Dragon Age, Veilguard, very linear. Like there's not a ton of like guesswork and like where I need to go to do what next, right? To put together the next piece of the puzzle. The game that is part of the game that it's going to kind of hold your hand, and it's going to give you some branches and options that you're going to choose. It's not that linear. It's very much kind of even more so than I would say. Gosh, what is the term for near linear wide path? Right? Was the PlayStation design model? It is not even. I think it's a step beyond that, but it's still not anywhere near open world. But it's not going to give you that right from the Baldur's Gate 3 thing, but it is going to give you kind of a quality of life thing that shortens up that degree of where the hell do I need to go and what the hell do I need to do type of thing that is a lower quality of life, particularly over a life cycle of constantly coming back to the game, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Does it have a lot of fetch quests or side quests that are just bloating it, or is it not too bad?
I don't personally think so. So there are quests that, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far, there are quests that uniquely shape your experience in the game, right? And they're not necessarily fetch quests, but they are things that you need to go do that frame out exactly which branch of the narrative that you're on. So that I don't think, based on the choices people make, like everybody isn't necessarily going to make them. So one of the things this game does kind of force you to do is it forces you to go get additional companions, right, to add to your party. But you're going to make choices about which adventures or which quests you go on to collect which type of companion. You're going to make choices that are going to kind of determine how impactful and how important that particular companion is to your story. You're going to choose who you spend time with. You're going to choose how your relationships build. All of that stuff is going to make differences in people's experience. The game is supposed to be 55 hours long with, I think, like 88 hours total of content. So, I mean, 2/3 of the game is stuff you need to go do, right? So I don't personally feel like yet that there's like a ton of, go fetch this BS tchotchke, right? This MacGuffin, just as a time, which it is not, I hate to say this, it is not an Ubisoft game, but before people run wild with that, right? My personal statement on the whole Ubisoft nickelbacking is the things people complain about too much stuff in your windshield on Ubisoft. I'm like, you can choose to not go do that stuff, right? There is a linear path to get through the main campaign of an Ubisoft game, and most of the complaining I feel like is just about people not being decisive about how they want to play the game. But that's just me.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's actually a great question.
Here in a minute. Just looking at the time. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a great question. I was going to ask that kind of question too about if it had like the fetch quests or the quest for the sake of having quests to add time to the game. So, Falk, I heard you said you have to go, and I'm actually getting ready. My voice is getting ready to crap out here at any moment.
I may add one last little completely
ahead.
non-related item, but it touches on the GOTY thing. I was just reading through earlier this week the financial performances for all the major Japanese publishers, and noted that Katakawa had made a comment that their security breach that they had in recent months that had a massive impact on their revenue and their financial performance. They were able to rectify that in the second quarter, so their first half performance is back to target thanks to the massive success of the Elden Ring DLC. So,
game of the year.
They pulled themselves out of it with that one. But yeah, if you want to see a slide pack that is completely not how a slide pack should be written, with way too much information and too much crap on each slide deck, go and have a look at Katakawa's investor relations slide pack for their half-yearly earnings. That thing is a mess. But the one for Sega Sammy actually is a really good one. That I just thought I'd just throw that in there, that Elden Ring DLC did so well globally. With the advantaged foreign exchange rates, that it recovered billions of yens worth of losses that they incurred when they had that security breach, their data breach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to know, another performance that probably should be in the GOTY conversation, which won't be, Dragon Ball Sparkling Zero did 3 million units in the first 24 hours of going on sale. So that's doing some pretty big numbers at the moment too. Not that
Yeah, I think
fighting game will ever be in the Game of the Year contender, but
yeah, you never
that's
know.
pretty
Maybe
decent.
one day.
Maybe 3
day,
million
you never know.
units in 24 hours is, yeah.
Such a shabby.
Gaming's going on the decline. The gaming is dead. There's no chance. Gaming's done. It's finished all over, you know.
Oh gosh, yeah. Those are the conversations people were having earlier in the year. Yeah.
I'll stop boring you with numbers, but I look forward to getting my hands on Dragon Age.
Yeah, I think they sold me, Falcon.
Not 100 and locally, it's $139 Australian for the base model. So it's $169 for the fancy pants Rich McGee version. So I'm going to be waiting a little while for that one.
Yeah,
I think
they may have sold me too, Falky. So I might be there, despite what Logic said to me earlier about staying away from his game. But I might profess it to be my goatee after playing it. So, but Falky, I want to thank you for joining us. Say this evening here in the U.S. morning there, Saturday down in Australia.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon. Actually, it's change of pace. Usually it's early morning or late morning or midday, but during the week. But it's nice to be able to sit here, not hammering away on reports or analysis, and be able to focus more on the conversation. And the world is still turning. Saturday the 9th, Saturday the 9th. It's good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the invite. It's been a while, and hopefully it's not too long for the next chat.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Falky, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And Nate, thank you. I know I reached out to you like the 11th hour again. I was like, Nate,
yeah, no problem.
Can you join us? Because I knew you were playing Dragon Age. That's why I wanted to have you on as well. And I knew you got the PS5 Pro, so I wanted to hear your thoughts. On the PS5 Pro. I saw your tweet earlier today with all the new accessories and I think a coffee mug as well. So
yeah. Priscilla's PlayStation coffee mug.
yeah. Oh, that's okay. I got you. Yeah. So no, that's awesome, man. Enjoy the PS5 Pro. I have not pulled the trigger on one. I don't think I'm going to get one, but I'm happy for those who have picked up the PS5 Pro this week. So my local GameStop actually still has like a few in stock. I just checked there earlier today, so they still had four left.
They only had 5 for pre-order here, which was crazy. Which was also pretty funny because when I went to go pick up mine, I went a little bit later, and the guy in front of me actually was picking his up too. So that was the timing on that was funny considering they only had 5 to pre-order. But yeah, man, like I said, it's been a phenomenal experience so far. So yeah, I mean, I don't expect everybody to jump in day one, but I mean, everybody I know that got one is really loving it. And like you said, just because you didn't get it today, don't mean you won't get it tomorrow. You know, something might turn up and you'd be like, oh man, I gotta have it. You know, so hopefully it entices some people.
I mean, maybe if they, there could, you never know. I mean, there could be a game that pushed me over the edge, but as right now, there's just no plans to pick one up. So,
understandable.
But also big shout out to Logic. Logic, always a pleasure having you on. It's been a while as well. But like I said, always great talk and shop with you as well. So thank you again for hopping on tonight. Appreciate it. Are you? To ask you, are you playing any Black Ops 6 multiplayer? Or are you still not engaged in that multiplayer just yet?
I'm not really engaged. I'm really not playing anything that's games as a service other than when I went back to Destiny 2 a few weeks ago. I've been playing Dragon Age the Veilguard, as well as started, what is it? Legend of Heroes Trails to Daylight or Daybreak? I can't remember.
Trails to Daybreak, yeah.
Yeah, that, and I've been playing some Civilization.
How is it, by the way?
I'm not that far in. Like that one I've really only just like, crack the seal on that one. Just got to like the first real like mission objective. And I'm taking met the informant or whatever, and then I'm taking off from there. Like I said, been playing that Civilization 6, and also started playing MotoGP 24 last night, which is another new release for this year.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. That's awesome, man. I like the variety in your rotation, man. Some good variety there. It's nice. Yeah, I've been playing Black Ops 6, the campaign. I'm actually enjoying it. It's fun.
Yeah, I started it myself.
Kind of like a good.
I'm gonna have to turn.
flick.
I think I'm gonna have to turn the difficulty down though. Because I ain't got time.
I'm playing it on regular.
Yeah.
What are you playing like on the highest difficulty?
I'm playing. Yeah, the highest, and it's like I've completed most of the prior campaigns on the highest difficulty, but the way that it's structured, when you get to that open part where it's like, hey, pick your area and go do these objectives. I'm like, I'm just not in the interest of getting one shot from 5 different directions. So I was like, I think I'm about to turn that down and just go ahead and get through it.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go back to regular.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. I'm enjoying it. I enjoy the campaign. It's great. Some, it's kind of got this, I don't know, like, I feel like it's a great, summer popcorn flick. It's got a lot of action, some intriguing, very intriguing, like espionage type story. And, interesting characters. I'm enjoying it so far. So I'm playing that, but I got to get back to some other stuff too. And hopefully I may try out Dragon Age Veilguard based on, what you guys were saying earlier. Also want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat for coming by this evening. Thank you so much. Not our regularly scheduled BRAP, but I wanted to do this one since I missed Wednesday. Since I was a year, my voice is going now. Tends to happen this time of the evening, always for the last week that I've been under the weather. But I want to thank everyone for coming by, hanging out with us. And please, if you haven't done so already, hit that like button. And if you do, consider subscribing, hitting the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And then we'll be back on Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our regular scheduled BRAP. So everyone have a great weekend. Until then, we will catch you next time. Thank you again.